Hi everyone, my name is Seraphina Yong, and I'll be presenting A Change of Scenery, Transformative Insights from Retrospective VR-embodied Perspective Taking of Conflict with the Close Other. This is a work that contributes insights on how reflection on conflict experiences through VR-embodied perspective taking impacts and improves communication around conflict in close relationships. So what makes conflict in close relationships any different from other types of conflict? Close relationships, such as family members, partners, or close friends, are important parts of our well-being. But personally meaningful conflict in close relationships plays a particularly complex role that makes it difficult to resolve without an approach that expands beyond the immediate context of the conflict. So when we think about conflict, personal conflict might involve deeper issues that more intimately affect people in the close relationship, unlike a task-centered conflict such as one that might happen at work. Non-personal conflicts might involve more concrete objectives that are more relevant to the task at hand, but the scope of personally meaningful conflicts may be more likely to extend beyond that immediate object of the conflict and reflect more deeply on the overall relationship, due to the level that people personally depend on each other in close relationships. To give an example of this, in a lot of cases, if a couple gets into a fight about who has or hasn't been doing the dishes, it's usually not actually about doing the dishes. And in the same vein, this comic strip from the Our Super Adventure series shows that the core of this argument the two of them are having isn't really about the pizza either. Keeping the relationship scope in mind, a lot of work in HCI has proposed great solutions for mitigating conflict in the real-time problem space, such as Malte Yong and Solis Shen's work on mediating conflict in teens and children, as well as Jean Costa's work on altering voice perception to reduce anxiety during personal conflicts. Looking at this design space in light of what we know about close relationships inspires us to propose that designing to support reflecting on the entire conflict interaction experienced could also lead to more improvement in conflict resolution at the relationship level. Video-based recall is a standard approach for this type of reflection in psychotherapy, but there's lack of evidence supporting its ability to improve conflict, or perspective taking, which is a core skill required for resolving conflicting perspectives. However, a large body of work in virtual reality has explored the ability of VR-based perspective taking through simulated experiences to successfully induce empathy for different social and ethnic minorities. In the current work, we study how perspective taking through immersive embodiment in VR might impact close others who actually know each other, and also how it might impact their perceptions of conflicting perspectives that they're experiencing. We built a system called Retrospective Embodied Perspective Taking, REPT, which is a biographically accurate hybrid of embodied perspective taking and video-based recall. The VR user here is able to take the perspective of a close other during a past conversation that they had, which is filmed from the partner's perspective in 360-degree video. So to evaluate the system, we asked the following research questions. First, how does REPT impact user reflections on a conflict discussion with a close other and perceptions of themselves and their partners in comparison to the traditional form of video-mediated recall? Second, how does subsequent communication around the same conflict issue change as a result of using REPT, again comparing to the traditional form of recall? We employed a mixed method study design with 26 couples, and the two reflection conditions of REPT, our retrospective embodied perspective taking system, and TAO, referring to treatment as usual, which is the split view video-based recall system used in psychotherapy. We used a post-intervention structured reflective interview to evaluate participants' reflections on the conflict discussion and their perceptions of themselves and their partners from RQ1. And we recorded separate conflict discussions from before and after the interventions to answer RQ2 by measuring changes in participants' actual behavior during conflict. The study procedure spanned 3 phases. During session 1, both partners came in for an initial conflict discussion adapted from the Markman-Cox procedure in psychology. This initial session was recorded, and we processed either regular or 360-degree video for use in one of those 2 conditions. In the final session 2, one of the partners re-experienced the first discussion either through the retrospective embodied perspective taking or by treatment as usual video. They chose 5 key moments from this experience, which shaped the structured interview that we conducted to collect their reflections. Lastly, both partners would participate in a second conflict discussion of the same topic as the discussion from session 1. In this work, we'll refer to partner A as the partner who experiences the perspective-taking intervention. We chose this asymmetric study design in order to avoid conflating the condition's effect on an individual user with potential group-level effects in discussion 2. In our structured reflective interview to answer question 1, we used 2 types of measurement and analysis. We performed thematic analysis on partner A's reflections of their retrospection on the initial conflict discussion, and we also measured empathic accuracy between partners on their ratings of each other's emotional states during selected moments of the conflict discussion. We also used the interactive dimensions coding system to measure changes in 11 total dimensions of personal communication across the first and second conflict discussions. This included dimensions such as level of positive and negative emotion, problem-solving skills, displays of support and validation, and communication skills, among others. Our interview findings uncovered 2 main axial themes in which participant responses tended to diverge. The first theme identifies how reflection content was framed by participants. Through axial coding, we discovered that participants from the Tao condition tended to focus their reflections on conversation content, such as their partner's behaviors or statements, whereas participants using REPT focused their reflections based on interpretations and details of their partners and their own personal experiences. In this presentation, we'll focus on highlighting findings from the second main theme, 4.2, but please feel free to take a look at our paper to read these findings in full detail. So our second main theme identified the types of insights that participants gain from re-experiencing and reflecting on the conflict discussion. Participants from the Tao condition gravitated towards incremental insights, such as increased understanding and reinforcement of beliefs that they wanted to keep in mind. In contrast, only REPT users reported transformative insights, which we define as complete reversal of a strongly held opinion. We follow here with some examples. Our findings prefix participants from the Tao condition with T and those from the REPT condition with V. So participant T3 described an incremental insight about how watching her partner express her feelings on conflict communication didn't really change how she felt or planned to act towards her partner, but found a significance in it serving as a reminder by bringing her back to that moment in the conversation and waking up her memory of what happened. Participant T8 puts emphasis on a point in the re-experience conversation where his partner was explaining her emotions in a way that clarified thoughts he was already having about the conflict, and he chose this as a significant insight due to the way that it reinforced key elements of the conflict they were already trying to solve. In comparison, participant V3 described a transformative insight where taking her husband's perspective made her change her mind about her frustration with his hand fidgeting during serious talks. Citing the embodiment experience of REPT, she described finding a lot of value in watching his hands from his perspective, and that she ended up feeling uncomfortable like he was instead of her original frustration. She said, "Seeing myself talk to him the way that I did, I can understand now why he would make those gestures because even I, in quotes, was making myself nervous." Another participant, V1, described how the retrospective embodied perspective taking altered his thought process around a financial conflict he was having with his wife about whether to share money, which actually resulted in him changing his opinion on the conflict itself. He talked step by step about how he listened to the same things she had already told him previously, but embodied her as this time. Like, he felt as if he were saying those things himself instead of her saying the same things to him as in the original discussion. He said, "I considered these thoughts as if they were mine," and changed how he thought about the original conflict issue. Our findings here show that the REPT system not only supports perspective taking, but also changes in perspective of how people in close relationships view each other. Although empathic accuracy was measured in this study, we did not find any significant differences to report. However, we did find significant differences across REPT and Tao conditions in the behavior change from session 1 to session 2 conflict discussions. For both of the dyadic dimensions, partners with a REPT user experience significantly more positive escalation, which is the amount of positive interactions that stimulate more positive interactions in a conversation. Similar results were found for significantly more decrease in negative escalation, and both of these showed large effect sizes measured by Cohen's d being over 1. For the individual dimensions of IDCS, we saw significant differences in 7 of the 9 dimensions for the behavior of partner A, who was the one that experienced the retrospection intervention. In this graph, we can see that REPT users showed significantly more increase in positive affect, problem-solving skills, displays of support and validation, and demonstration of communication skills. Conversely, they showed significantly more decrease in displayed levels of negative affect, denial, and conflict during the discussion. For partner B's individual dimensions, we found a significant difference only for the amount of decrease in negative affect from the first to the second conflict discussion. In combination, these results answer our second research question by demonstrating how multiple dimensions of conflict communication improve significantly after the use of retrospective embodied perspective taking. To summarize our key findings, we presented the retrospective embodied perspective taking system as a meta-conflict approach to conflict resolution in close others. Going beyond just perspective taking, it demonstrated the ability to stimulate perspective change and enhance healthy communication patterns during conflict. Our transformative insight section also demonstrated that REPT can support the revision of social and attributional biases that are particularly problematic in close relationships, such as overestimating how much you know about your partner. And the detailed participant reflections from our interview show content-grounded evidence of a potential link between virtual embodiment and cognitive empathy, which has not so far been observed in the literature. For sake of time here, I'll only be presenting one of our design implications, but please check out our paper to read more. So embodied cognition and embodied interaction are well-known concepts in HCI that emphasize the link between our rationalizing minds and body actions. Based on the findings of this work, we would like to propose an explicit addition of embodied social cognition as a principle to guide the design of socially reflective technology that prioritizes embodied social rationality. So what we mean by this is that embodying human experiences can help people generate useful social understandings, which is particularly important given that social context is distinctly subjective and there's no actual true way to accurately access someone's inner state or understand it. Therefore, we propose that social informatics in HCI could, instead of the historical focus on information-centered approaches, which is like effectively representing information to be understood through observation, instead benefit from an emphasis on an experience-centered approach to designing social reflection technologies. This can support people to kind of creatively grow or generate their own effective understanding of others' experiences. Thanks for taking the time to watch this presentation, and feel free to contact me if you'd like to talk more about this work.